Florence, this is Good Morning PD on Live 95.
We always talk about these things that don't have exact answers. QAT is our sponsor. Team
kind of
QAT
fun,
is the website, 843-661-0937. It is kind of fun.
Because that's what makes you think.
It's the squishiness of the issues. And I don't have the answer. I mean, I certainly don't. But as I read and process things, and I consider myself to be somewhat of a libertarian Republican, the last thing in the world I want the government to do is try to spread the wealth or redistribute the wealth in a fair and accurate proportion.
But having said that, you do talk an awful lot about income inequality and how you think it's going to play a role, not just in upcoming presidential elections, but in the future of the country.
I think it's already played a role. I mean, I think Trump capitalized on some of the income inequality. He didn't come out and say, hey, income inequality sucks, and we got to do a better job. Bernie Sanders speaks about it in a very methodical, organized way. Trump brushed around the edges, but I made a couple of notes during the break. And here's my opinion. I think income inequality is caused. There is no single cause for income inequality. I mean, it's not, the act of 1979 led to this. And it's not I think they're contributors. I think it's a complex dynamic. I think you've got trade and globalization. I mean, I think some of our economically minded listeners, we've debated trade and globalization. Education and skills would be another. The value of a college education, the premium wage you earn if you get a certain degree from a certain college. But I still think we live in this shareholder revolution. And that's kind of a weird phrase, but I do believe that government policy has been behind everything. Government policy has dictated that everybody need to go to college. Well, what happens when everybody has a college degree? The value of a college degree. Think about it, Reb. We're charging more for something we're providing more of. So supply and demand are completely out of kilter when it comes to college degrees. We're government policy. And you can say, oh, government policy, I mean, do people go to college? Of course it does. When you allow people to borrow money and the government backstops the money, you're distorting supply and demand. So I think government policy has distorted the value of an education and the premium wage associated with education and skills. I think that's completely out of whack. I think that's why we've got more college graduates serving coffee at Starbucks than any time in American history. That's government policy. That's bad policy as far as I'm concerned, because once again, you're charging more money for a product that you're offering more of. That's just out of kilter. That makes no sense. All right, let's take trade and globalization. I have said very candidly that I believe globalization is a political ideology. I don't think it was happenstance. I do get automation and technology and robotics and outsourcing and the global economy. I understand that. But I still believe that government policy was the accelerant. It was the gasoline on the fire that was going to happen to some degree, whether we got involved or not. Emerging markets, China, India, trade is a big deal in this. And then I think the third thing is this, and it's just what I call it, this shareholder revolution that we've been a part of. And corporate America, for whatever reason, has done everything within its power to not pay its employees more money than they must. And we can have this debate, and we've had this debate. I think of some of our callers. It's not the corporation's job to increase employment. It's the corporation's obligation to be more profitable. Okay, fair enough. But how far down that road are we going to head without having some sort of social unrest? And I think that's where we are. So when we look at income inequality, and we have talked a lot about it, and I think the reason we talk a lot about it is it's profound, it's real, it's going to be something that I think, Reb, is disruptive in American politics. And once again, I don't think it has a single cause. I mean, I don't think it's all government's fault. I don't think it's, all capitalism's fault. I do believe this. I believe that the buddying up of the political class, the money class, the special interests to government policy has been the grease in the skid. I mean, it has really and truly, when you look at income inequality in America today, is it greed? Probably, but you're not going to temper greed. Greed's always been a critical element in capitalism. I want more. That's why I work harder. So I'm not critical of greed. What I'm arguing is when you look at trade and globalization, and you believe that's a contributor, you got to believe government policy was in the middle of that. When you look at education and skills, you got to believe that government's in the middle of that. And then when you look at this, what I call the shareholder revolution, that's kind of another issue that I think government has absolutely been a large part of it. We talked about the decline of labor unions, the deregulating of Wall Street, raising minimum wage. We're told the Fed has a perspective or an agenda of full employment with monetary policy. The government's been in the middle of all these things that I think have contributed in a large portion to income inequality.